Aikido vanish.
Code of Honor, Season 1, Episode 4. Now, immediately, or certainly very closely upon learning about talking about this episode, many people will say, wow, Code of Honor, that's the racist nightmare of Next Generation. That's one of the worst of all time. I might not argue with you about saying it's one of the worst episodes, certainly one of the very weakest. But in terms of the racism, that's something I guess we can get to a little later. Certainly, that's the big sticking point. That's the big sort of smear on Code of Honor. And Next Generation, this being only the 4th episode, was just getting its sea legs or its space legs. It was just starting to soar and go into warp. And you can argue that Code of Honor, someone said, one of the big sites said, if I had just seen that, out of the blue, I would never think a great show like Next Generation would have evolved, sprung from Code of Honor. And I gotta agree on that one. So before going through, the racial overtones or even the racist ones, I thought, we'd talk about the episode itself. Is it that bad? Is it truly unwatchable? I don't think it's unwatchable, but it really is a weak one. It really is one of the episodes, and Will Wheaton said this actually. Great take on it. That if they had continued to churn out episodes like Code of Honor, Next Generation would probably have been canceled very quickly. I think he even said, the first season, of course, is very evolving, embryonic, and weak. But because of the fan love of the cast and just Star Trek being back and the great special effects, maybe even, of course, Patrick Stewart as Picard and, Spiner as Data, they were all such good actors that Next Generation probably would not have survived if they kept churning out episodes of the quality of Code of Honor. But again, let's talk about, I figured, the story itself, and which is not much there, but it is it's an interesting episode for a lot of reasons. Number one, and a buddy of mine, my buddy Tom, reminded me the other day that it is truly the Yar episode of season 1. There's almost no other episode that comes close in terms of her participation and her focus. And she is the focus of the, alien leader, and he kidnaps her, he abducts her, and he wants to use her for his, evil plot, his plan to get rid of his wife. And so Luton, played by the great Jessie Lawrence Ferguson, great actor. He's in Prince of Darkness, a lot of great movies, one of my favorite John Carpenter horror films. But so Jessie Lawrence Ferguson plays Luton and does a great job. But Luton abducts Yar, as this sort of symbolic traditional thing he claims at first of the culture. Data then says it's like counting coup. And that is a concept for, I guess, Native American Plains Indians in North America. And it comes from sort of a French derivation. And they make a joke about the French language being obscure now and sort of useless. And Picard, chastises him and punishes him there. But the bottom line, of course, is that we have this leader of this alien culture taking Yar for his own evil plans and, making her into an instrument of his designs and his wife to get rid of his wife. So the whole episode revolves around, the behind the scenes of Luton and what he has for Yar. So it's sort of obvious. You see him talking to his second, to his, the dude that is like his, second guy. And it is what it is. It's a very obvious plot. The thing for me and maybe other, martial arts aficionados and fight aficionados, the finale fight between Yar and Yarina, actress Carol Selman, who is Luton's first one, sort of his wife, of course, in our, estimation, I guess, our culture. So that fight, it's pretty corny. It reminds me, it's taken, this, of course, Next Generation is from the 80s, from those American Gladiator with the neon tubes, the fluorescent tubes. I mean, it's kind of silly, wacky fun in one way, but it's very dated. And so that's not what gets me. I love the holodeck demonstration that Yar gives to Luton. And it's really great. So to me, that's a highlight. I was really into martial arts. I was getting into the Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme in the mid-late 80s. And so here was, I would imagine, a pretty good martial artist with a stunt person subbing for, Yar, for Denise Crosby. And so when Yar shows Luton and, his people how good and effective and authentic the holodeck can just summon up, a fighter, an Aikido fighter. And she goes, Aikido vanish. And, the Aikido holodeck, the holographic Aikido guy puts his guy to shame as one of his, his second, one of his, bodyguards. And so for that's pretty cool. I think anytime you see, really good martial arts in any show, especially something like Star Trek, because later you'd have Worf fighting. He became, took over for chief of security, and there was a lot of great fights with Worf. So it's not the best, of course. Certainly the finale isn't great, as I've said, with the neon tubes and Yar and Yarina. But the whole thing with, Aikido, with that holodeck, and I think also that was one of the first times, other than, the episode or two before, I guess, with the holodeck, it was one of the first times for me to see what the holodeck could really do. It can, play games, and you can go on beaches or faraway aliens, but you can train with a holographic opponent. Aikidos, maybe you wanted to, learn baseball or diving or whatever. And so it's fond memories seeing the Aikido guy come on, and that's about it for that episode for me. Everything else is sort of flat. I think what's really interesting about the racial overtones and it being racist, Will Wheaton says that he doesn't think it's racist at all, pretty much. He says, quote, "It's not as overtly racist as I recalled. It's certainly not as, say, racist or sexist as Angel 1. If the Ligonians hadn't been arbitrarily determined to be entirely African American, it wouldn't have been an issue." And with great novelist Keith D. Candido, I interviewed Keith. We had a great lunch together. And Keith D. Candido says that he thought the episode was cliche riddled, but he didn't think it was really racist. He says, quote, if the Ligonians had been played by white people, none of the dialogue would have changed and nobody would call it racist. So make of it what you will. Enjoy the episode or not. I got to be honest, when I'm rewatching Next Generation, it's one I pretty much skip over. I rewatched it for this video and for the the top 5 most hated Next Gen episodes, but it's not something in my watch list. But if you like Aikido, if you like holodecks, and if you want to see Denise Crosby as Yar, because it focuses on her, and it's essentially the best, or certainly the only, or one of the only true showcases for Tasha Yar in the first season, because of course she would be leaving us in Skin of Evil. Hope you're enjoying, hope you're subscribing. See you soon.